Today I have the DJI Air 3S, which has a host of improvements over the original Air 3 and still has that 2-camera lens system which we know and love. Let's get flying. So let me tell you all about the different lenses on this drone. Now we have a wide lens that is the equivalent of a 24mm lens, and that has behind it a 1-inch sensor. The other lens is the equivalent of a 70mm lens roughly, and that has a 1 by 1.3-inch sensor. Now these sensors have been vastly improved for low light performance, and actually quite a lot of things on this drone have been improved for low light performance. When it comes to the stills performance that these sensors and lenses offer, you can get up to a 50 megapixel still when you're shooting with the wide lens and up to a 48 megapixel still when shooting with the long lens. You can also shoot 12 megapixel stills if you don't want, all of that detail there, because sometimes 48, 50 megapixel is a little more than we need. When it comes to the video performance you're getting out of this drone, you get 4K resolution up to 120p, which is the about equivalent of 4 times slow motion. You also can shoot 4K 60 in HDR mode, so if you're in a really contrasty environment, you're going to get really good performance out of it shooting in that mode, so it's cool that that goes all the way up to 60p. You can shoot Full HD up to 240p, and you can shoot vertically at 2.7K up to 60p as well. Now, I think that's really cool because we need more vertical usage from these kind of drones and these cameras nowadays, so the fact that it doesn't just have good horizontal performance but also vertical is wonderful. The file sizes coming out of the 3S are actually 30% smaller than that of the original Air 3 as well. So they're compressing that a little bit more, which means that you're going to be able to just record a lot more media within the same amount of space. There is 42 gigabytes of internal memory stored in this drone though, so you can record straight to it. You don't need a card if you don't want one, but there is also an SD card slot if you do want to shoot on that too. The video it records is in 10-bit, and that can be encoded to H.264 or H.265. Now the fact that we get 10-bit with all of that color control pairs perfectly with the fact that this drone can shoot in D-Log. I'm probably going to mostly be shooting in D-Log today because I like to have flexibility in post. I like to be able to push and pull my images. It can also shoot in just regular mode though if you want something good straight out of the tin, or that HDR which I mentioned. When it comes to dynamic range, which we're going to be needing a lot of today because it is such a bright sunny day, and we've come to the woods because I want to test out some features which I'll tell you about shortly in the woods. But it has up to 14 stops of dynamic range, and that is on both the lenses, so that's not exclusive to one singular lens, which is of course a very wide range of dynamic range, meaning that we can shoot in extremely contrasty situations. Here you can see some of the shots we got today. Now, one of my favorite features of the Air 3S is the ActiveTrack 360. You may be familiar with this. It's in drones such as the DJI Mini 4 Pro. And essentially what it does is it means that you can select a subject and the drone will follow and track that subject whilst also keeping them in focus. Therefore, if you're somebody that likes to film themselves, if you're solo shooting, of course, solo shooting yourself while you're walking around the woods with a drone is near impossible. But with the ActiveTrack, it takes all of the work out of it for you. Pretty cool, eh? It's a really useful tool for filmmakers on the go. This ActiveTrack also works alongside the object avoidance, which is pretty useful because if it didn't work alongside that, it wouldn't be very good at all. But the object avoidance is one of the major improvements they've made with the Air 3S. And that is due to the fact that at the front of it, there is now a Lidar sensor. Now, a Lidar sensor performs really well at night. So previously, the sensors that they had on these drones, they performed really well in the day, but they essentially used vision. They needed light to function well. Therefore, when you were flying at night, the object avoidance was pretty unreliable and you were quite prone to crashes. Now, because on the front they have this Lidar sensor, it means that when you're flying at night, you're much less likely to be crashing into anything. But please do note that that sensor is only on the front of the drone, so it's essentially only going to perform well if you are flying directly forwards. If you're flying backwards and stuff like that, because there's no Lidar sensor on the back, if you're flying backwards at night, that is still a large risk of crashing into objects. For me, this is awesome because it pairs so brilliantly with that larger sensor, which is going to deliver better low light performance. The fact that you have better low light performance and also obstacle avoidance, which is much more optimized for low light shooting, means that this drone is so well catered for people that have that as their particular niche. So if you're somebody that's really interested in nighttime drone work, definitely take a look at the Air 3S. Now, a few last specs on this cool piece of kit. It has NDs, which you can get alongside it. There is an 8, a 32 and a 128 ND. So that is brilliant for filmmakers. We love to control our exposure using ND filters. It also has a 45-minute battery life. And you heard me correctly, this is a drone of this size with a 45-minute battery life. Now, people that don't use drones all the time, you're probably thinking that sounds like very little, but actually it's quite the opposite. A typical drone battery life for a lot of drones might be 20 minutes or something like that. So having 45 minutes in the tank of this is brilliant. We've been using largely only one battery today, getting all the drone shots that we've got, and that is completely irregular. One of my favorite features of this drone. It has many modes that you're used to seeing within DJI drones. So you've got your normal flying mode, your cinematic flying mode, which will be a bit slower and have slightly more smoother motion, and your sport mode, which will take off a lot of the safety precautions, but will make sure that your drone can fly up to 50 miles an hour, which is insane. So when you see like mountain bike stuff and things like that, if it's been shot on one of these, it will definitely be in the sport mode, but do use it with caution because it does remove those safety features. You can wirelessly file transfer. They are going to be slightly smaller, more compressed files, but you can do that wirelessly straight to your phone. If you want immediate uploads or you want to send your clips to people for reference or recce's or whatever it might be. Of course, you can also plug in the drone to access that internal storage, or as I mentioned, you can use your SD cards. One extremely important thing, which I'd like to cover with this drone, is that it weighs 724 grams. Now, those of you that fly drones, perhaps you might be using the Mini series. They're an extremely popular series of drones. And one of the reasons they're so popular is because they are sub 250 grams. And that essentially means that they have to abide by less rules than drones that weigh more. Now, because this is over 250 grams, there are a number of rules which you must adhere to when using this. One of the most obvious ones is that if you're using it for commercial use or in public, then you need to have a proper certification and a proper drone license to fly it. If you do want to get into flying and you want to use a bigger drone like this, please, please, please make sure to do all the necessary research. Make sure you're not flying it anywhere unsafe, and just make sure that you're not being silly. These things are really cool, they're really fun, and they kind of look like toys, but they really aren't. They are quite serious, so I just want to stress that as much as possible. One of my favorite takeaways from this drone, well, for me, it's definitely these lenses. Being able to shoot a 24mm or 70mm is so cool. That just gives you so much flexibility. And of course, having those larger sensors just means you're going to deliver a better image. You can even actually use a digital zoom. We'll show a shot of it here, where you're actually zooming in further upon those lenses, but that isn't doing it within the lens. That is a digital zoom, so you are going to lose a bit of quality there. But of course, if you want to get a nice looking shot straight out the can that's zoomed in, you can utilize that function. Thank you for watching this video. This drone has been a joy to use, and we'll make sure to catch you in the next one.